Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Talking Tents, a RaceBot TV podcast. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, and I'm joined by veteran esports commentator Connery Maddock, with Hugo Louise down in the production booth. It sounds very familiar, and that's what we're hoping for. Our job here at RaceBot TV is to tell the stories of sim racing, and over the next 40 minutes or so, that's what we're hoping to do. Today we'll be joined by Tommy Ostgaard, Porsche Esports Supercup driver for Coanda Simsport, to review the last round at Road Atlanta, and we're very excited to be talking about some other topics in sim racing with Connery Maddock. Connery, excited to bring you in here today. Just how excited are you about what is a start of a new venture here for RaceBot TV?
Yep, of course. Us at RaceBot, we're used to just bringing you live race coverage, but this is something a little bit different, and we can be a little bit more free form, I suppose, with the topics that we talk about. We can talk about sim racing in general. We can even talk about other sims other than iRacing, which is sometimes, it's going to be a big change for us, I suppose. But I can't wait to get things started here.
Yeah, obviously our specialty is in iRacing, and we'll start with a iRacing event that happened just a few weeks ago, the VCO Cup of Nations presented by Acronis, and it started with 600 competitors across, I think it was 48 different countries, Connery, whittled down to 16 teams, and over 2 days, I think we got to see some of the best racing action that we've ever seen on the iRacing Esports Network.
Yeah, it was kind of a tale of two kinds of races, I suppose, because we did have those absolutely amazing, we have no idea what is happening sorts of races, you know, where anyone could have really come out on top. And then we had, I remember that Suzuka race in the GT, in the Nissan GTPs, which were, it was a bit interesting, I think we shall say, especially with the start. I think we have a couple of clips lined up from that. In fact, there's the GTP start, and yeah, that's was probably one of the lowlights or highlights, depending on your point of view, of the entire broadcast, because as soon as I saw a standing start on the iRacing system, I didn't see the pace car lined up at the front of the field. All I could think of was, oh no. These turbos, they're gonna lag, they're gonna kick in, and everyone's gonna die.
Yeah, and that was an unintentional mistake, and one of the few mistakes that we saw in what was a very fast-paced event. You know, the races came back to back, and you know, I think one of the lower lights of that event, unfortunately, Conor, we'll just touch on it briefly, was that race at Indy. But one of the great things that I remember about that event was the 4 wide call, and you know, we saw that was one of the races where we saw all the drivers from some of the countries competing, and that format, just, you know, mixing in all the teams and making sure that you're not just fighting, you know, the people in first or second, you're fighting the people, you know, in your groups and things like that. It just produced a very different form of racing, and kind of bringing on that legacy that the World Cup of iRacing has, this new VCO Cup of Nations. It really just elevated the format to something new, in my opinion.
Yeah, not just 4 drivers side by side into the 3, there was 4 countries as well, all representing. In that was the last chance qualifier, wasn't it, with the IndyCar race, which was a bit of a slog, all things considered. I think I'll be completely honest there, considering we had quite a few yellows, and of course with the caution laps not counting, it made things a bit interesting as far as the race administration side goes. But we got through that, and in the end we did see some awesome action across the entirety of the 2 days that we actually had broadcasting that. I think, like you said, the format really worked. It really worked quite well, and I think that's one of those luxuries that we get in sim racing, because I doubt you'd even really get the opportunity to try something like that in the real world. You know, you have to have too many people on board with the idea and a bunch of funding with something that you're not entirely sure would work. But in sim racing, we can just boot up a few servers, get some people on the race administration and stewarding side to prepare a couple of spreadsheets, and off and away we go. And I think it actually really, really, really worked. Yeah,
and you know, this event was such a success. I know there's more in the pipeline upcoming. We can't talk too much about that, obviously, but you know, it goes a lot further than that, obviously, because then we go to the second day of the finals, and everyone almost expected Team Germany to walk home with this, but it wasn't easy, Connery. They did manage to take home the win, but Team France and Team Italy, they kept them honest all the way till the end, and you know, the drama kept all the way to the last lap. We have some clips of that there, but you know, Jonas Wallmeyer in the Williams FW31, well, he was really struggling on that last lap, and he almost lost it on quite a few occasions, and that would have been the end of their title hunt.
Yeah, it would have been, of course, some clips from the final round there, and well, for Team Germany, it was a high heart rate affair, I think is probably the fairest way to put it. Of course, Max Spinnaker coming away with the race win, but it could have all changed depending on how his teammates fared in the race. And as soon as he saw those German cars dropping like flies towards the end there, it got very, very scary for them indeed. I doubt the Spanish car spinning at the end there really mattered, considering how the points worked out. But with Hijlon catching Beneke at the in the dying moments of the race, you know, you're seeing 2-3 tenths of a second come off each lap. You start to think, ooh, if he can get within a good slipstreaming distance here, then this could be all over for Germany. But Beneke, you know, he's 11k R rating for a reason. He was able to hold off the pressure, and you know, it just goes to show how good he really is. But man, that was way harder than it needed to be for them.
And the event obviously had a prize pool attached, about £7,500 of prize pool, but the event was also for charity in aid of UNICEF. And right now, the target goal of 5,000, well, £3,457 have been collected. You can still go on to justgiving.com and donate there. And, you know, Connery, it's so easy that, you know, Paul Smith, the commentator for the race, did it during the broadcast. So, you know, we'd encourage everyone to still go and do that, because you can go do that right now still.
Well, I kind of did it during one of the breaks with the broadcast, so I didn't do it live on air. But yeah, I did my part as well. I hope everyone else did, competitors, broadcasters, everyone else, because it is a really good cause. You know, it's good to be able to put funds forward to something like that. I mean, you know, we're at Race Sport, at least, we're not, you know, doing charity broadcasts isn't a foreign concept, considering that we support charities on our Monday Night Skippy series, you know, so it's a thing that we do, but maybe not in that way. And with the amount of money raised, I think that is incredible.
Yeah, and we have to thank all the partners for that event. And, you know, also it was great to be broadcasting on the WTF1 channels, just increases the visibility for the event that little bit more. And it was great to have Matt Gallagher as well. But we'll now move on to another topic, Connery, and this is something that's kind of been bubbling on the surface over the last few months. And that's the topic of real racing drivers and their attitude towards sim racing. And it's kind of resurfaced with some clips of Christopher Zeutling, who is a 911 Cup car driver in real life. And we'll get the clips on screen in just a moment. But he was involved in some intentional wrecking after the flag. And, you know, it's something that, Connery, you never like to see. And here you can see here, actually, he's even slowing down the guy on the last lap of the race here. So, I mean, this was something that obviously was building up for a while in Chris's case. And obviously the frustration just boiled over.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in any sort of sporting event, you are going to have tempers flare. I think that's probably fair to say. But if you're, you know, representing a brand, if you're representing a team, you know, with their associated sponsors, then you should really, you know, be one of the first things in your mind. You know, my actions are going to reflect on those companies and on that team. And I think that's, you know, not just what obviously Chris has to learn, but a lot of other sim racing teams as well that I can think of. Really, they don't have good PR speak. And I know everyone kind of hates PR speak, but it's there for a reason, because if your drivers, you know, get out of control and say something they might regret, or, you know, do something they might regret, then you kind of like a fish out of water in that situation. You have absolutely no way to recover. And of course, you know, with this incident right now, that action is completely inexcusable. Yes, it is after the race, so it doesn't affect the race results, but there's still safety rating in effect with if not all the cars have crossed the line just yet, which is how it works in iRacing. So yeah, it's unfortunate. You know, it's, you know, full throttle into the back of him. What else can you say about that? And yeah, it's not great. And I hope appropriate action is taken by iRacing.
Yeah, and, you know, I can just speak from the perspective of someone who owns a direct drive wheel. You know, as soon as I cross the line now in a lot of these races, Connor, I hit my, you know, the emergency stop so that I kill all the forces that come to the wheel. Because, you know, if something happens like that and someone just even accidentally drives into the back of you, you can, you know, cause some actual physical harm to yourself, because the amount of force that some of these wheels puts out now, it can be significant. So, you know, I think, like you say, there really is no excuse, but it's really coming to a head. We've seen Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, Daniel Abt. There's a lot of instances of this, and I can speak from personal experience as well, where I've successfully protested a real driver in the past for an intentional wreck. So, there just seems to be a little bit of an attitude that these real drivers have, and I don't mean this in a negative way too much, because they have the best job in the world, and I think any sim driver would love to be in that position. But sometimes they come into this sim world where all of us, especially the guys who take it more competitively, this is where we spend so much time, when we invest so much effort, and to have someone who we look up to treat this pastime of ours like this, I think it doesn't really reflect nicely on the efforts that people put to try and grow the sim community.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've talked about at length on one of my many Twitter threads that I've posted over the years, but this is just one incident, but I think it is a symptom of, a more wider spread issue, like you described. I mean, you just got to look at the F1 Esports, their Pro Invitational stuff, their virtual Grand Prix, and some of the racing there, I wouldn't even categorize as racing, to be honest. It's just more bumper cars, just a group of friends trying to have fun, and it doesn't really advertise sim racing in the way we perhaps want it advertised, as in its own discipline of motorsport. I think those sorts of broadcasts and those sorts of actions, really kind of put a roadblock there. It's unfortunate because it's a massive opportunity, with the whole COVID thing and with real life racing shutting down for all intents and purposes. It was a massive opportunity for sim racing to show what we're made of. And in some instances, we really did succeed. Some of the NASCAR broadcasts were incredibly successful. The Redline broadcast that we did, there's some other broadcasts on other sims that looked really good as well. Virtual Le Mans as well was, despite a few technical issues here and there with R-Factor, then it was still a very polished broadcast, with the drivers behaving, with the commentators being good as well. But some instances, like one of the series that we broadcasted with the DTM guys, like that was a lot of contact there and not a lot of respect given. F1 Esports as well, with the pro drivers, even celebrities that have nothing to do with motorsports joining in and kind of messing things up. It wasn't really the best look, and as a result, I don't think many people that are tuned into those broadcasts specifically are going to stick around and see what else sim racing has to offer even after this whole lockdown ends.
Yeah, well, you bring up the virtual Le Mans. We'll just quickly talk about that, and we'll talk about it a little bit more with our guest Tommy in just a little bit. But that event, the production value was, and the effort that they spent to get that many people in the same location, I think it really just showed how seriously they took the event. The Motorsports Games also put a very thorough rule book together, and I really think that was one of the events that really showcased how some of these drivers spent a lot more time taking it seriously, because some of the reports for some of the real drivers who then teamed up with sim drivers, I mean, you had these real drivers then tweeting to the sim drivers, thanking them for all the time and the effort. And I can talk from my experience helping some of the drivers for the IndyCar iRacing Challenge as well. Some of these drivers really did sit down and realize that it doesn't translate 100%, but the racecraft and all of that, a lot of that is analogous, and they just had to figure out, especially Scott Dixon, we saw him get a lot better in the IndyCar Challenge. Once he figured out there was a little bit of a difference in how the cars behaved, and he understood that and worked around it, they just found a lot more speed and got the kind of results that they were used to,
Yeah, like you said, the IndyCar broadcasts were particularly good as well. I mean, maybe with the exception of Pagenaud. I think that's probably worth noting there, as that was a whole huge drama that I saw basically everyone on my timeline talking about, because I follow a lot of people in sim racing. I tend to know if something has happened even in other sims, but there were people on my timeline that I didn't even know were into motorsport talking about this, and I'm like, wow, this is kind of extended into a different realm, and probably not for a good reason.
And that's probably aided a little bit there by Lando, who has done a lot of streaming in the past few months, and collaborated with some streamers, not necessarily just in sim racing as well, and that's given him the kind of audience that, I mean, like you say, it's just showing sim racing in to a different audience, but maybe not in the kind of light that we'd like.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of always going to happen because some real life drivers do have this attitude as it's, well, they do the real thing for their day job, so this is kind of a secondary fun hobby for them where they don't really care about the consequences. And if you're a good enough driver in real life, then I guess you can maybe take that attitude anyway, because it's not like your job's going to be at risk as far as your seat is concerned in a particularly big series. But if you're one of these like semi-pro drivers in the real world that do national series, club series, but you also do sim racing, that is a little bit more risky to be a less well behaved there, because that can really, really affect things, because it's another revenue stream potentially for you doing the sim racing. I know, and a lot of drivers, are looking to it just for that, because maybe their actual small real life series, especially if they don't place particularly well, they don't get a lot of prize money, they don't get a lot of sponsorship. Sim racing can supplement that.
And I think, Connery, that's actually a good time to start transitioning to talking to our guest for today, Tommy Ostgaard, because our viewers today, they may know him a bit more for his accomplishments in sim racing just this year. He won the Daytona 24 in the Daytona prototype with Coanda Simsport last year. He won a feature race, the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Challenge. And, Tommy Ostgaard, he's got a history in real racing as well. You look back to 2011, 2012, multiple Norwegian championships, and I'm excited to talk to him a little bit more about today. So, Tommy, how are you doing today? Excited to have you here on the first episode of Talking Tens.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so let's just start off a little bit with your background in real racing, because it started off fairly young, and it started off as kind of a family thing, as I understand it. You and your family were working on the cars kind of by yourself.
Yeah, my dad he's been in motorsport for many years, so he's done all kind of things from karting to bikes and to road racing and rally. So I had the interest in motorsport very early, and I remember, well, I've been told that when I was very young, like 4 years old, I told my dad when he was looking at a Norwegian go-kart site that when I get older, I'm gonna be racing one of those.
And so you started off in karting at the age of 8. It went pretty well there. You've then managed to jump into the single-seaters. Can you kind of talk about how that opportunity kind of happened? Because I think for a lot of people who maybe, have only done sim racing, they don't really see how those type of opportunities really come around.
Yeah, so it all started, being family driven and on a family budget with karting. And then I wouldn't say I was like a natural, because it took me quite a bit of time to get any pace. But we found it in the end, and we got an opportunity to basically rent the car for free if we built it up, because it was just like... you just had a frame, so it was an old chassis and everything, an old engine that we put together. So we were able to sort of use our family budget still, and that was around when I was 14, and also the time that I started doing sim racing. So it worked out pretty well in that end. So I started sim racing and driving a old single seater in Norway and Sweden around the same time. And could you really tell that once I sort of started to do sim racing a bit more serious, and once I got better in the sim, I could notice that I would get better in real life as well. So once I got better in real life, I was getting better in sim racing. So they sort of worked really nice together, doing both at the same time. But it was all on a family budget, and we repairing our own car and working on it, which is fairly common in Norway. You don't really have any motorsport teams in Norway, where motorsport is pretty low. So that's how we started. And then in the end, I started working as a developer, and I was extremely lucky to get sponsored by the company I worked for, Marcello. And that's when I sort of took the step to go to the UK and take it a step further, driving a race in the Formula BMW and also doing some Formula Renault and some Clio Cup.
So you did mention that you were doing some simulator work, when at this time, and this was obviously right around when iRacing was kind of coming up. But I don't think you were doing iRacing back then. So what were the simulators that you were kind of using back then? Was it Live for Speed, something like that, or R Factor?
Yeah, I tested R Factor quite a bit back then, but it was Live for Speed that I was mainly on. And I was there with Hugo Luis and all the old guys from back in the days. And you can see a lot of them are now doing iRacing. So I did actually test iRacing back then. I think it was in 2012. But that's when I sort of started racing in the UK and kind of stopped doing sim racing in that way, and used it just more for preparing for my real events.
Yeah, and so then when you kind of went over to the UK as well, you started doing some work with the iZone Academy. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that, because obviously that I'm sure helped you a lot as you were, developing as a driver. But then that's also something you've been doing not only with, VRS Coanda and the academy there, but also you had your own academy that you were running in Norway as well. And I have to assume that some of the lessons that you learned, in the UK is what kind of inspired you to set that up yourself. So can you kind of talk about that experience at iZone, and then what inspired you to come back home and do the same kind of thing as well?
Yes, I actually won. When I won, I think it was the overall championship in the Formula Basic that I ran in Norway and Sweden. I actually won a trip to a few similar places in the UK, and iZone being one of them. And I thought iZone was just, on another level than the others. And I learned a lot of things there that I wish that I would have known when I was younger, because I was like 18, I think, at the time. And once I started doing single seaters, 18, 19, 20 years old. So I wish I had knew all those things that I learned at iZone. Like, they focus a lot on, your mentality, your fitness, where you're looking. They have like eye tracking systems, so you can see exactly where you're looking when you're driving. So you record it and you compare it. And I got to compare myself against like Formula One driver Kevin Magnussen and other top professionals who were there practicing. So I learned so much by being there, and I wish that I had known earlier, because it would have changed my career, I think, quite massively. And I wanted sort of to give that back to other fellow Norwegians who had the same aspirations as I do, to sort of help them to get on a higher level earlier in their career. So that's when I set up the Tommy Ostgaard Race Academy, and we sort of tried to get people in, some big Norwegian talents that maybe didn't have the funds. So we tried to run it completely free and get some sponsors on board who could finance at least some of the trips to the racetracks. But back to iZone, I started off, as you said, as a client there, and then I think it was later, back in 2015 perhaps, I moved to the UK and started working there as a coach. So then I sort of learned even more by being in that environment for a full year. So there's a lot of things that I've taken from iZone, and I apply it every day to my sim racing today. So that was my time at iZone is the most valuable time I've had in regards to my racing and sim racing career.
So let's kind of talk about the end of that time at iZone and kind of the end of your real racing, as it were, because from the research I've done, kind of around 2014, 2015 is when the opportunities kind of became a little bit scarcer. And then in 2017, you started doing a little bit more sim racing, jumping into iRacing, jumping into the Positive Sim Racing team. And that obviously built up into your joining the Coanda guys in 2018. But, how did it kind of work at the end of that period with iZone as the, kind of opportunities came down? How did you decide that you wanted to jump back and focus on sim racing, as opposed to, you mentioned it before, you were working as a developer. So obviously that's always an option that you could go back to, and it's a semi-appealing option for many people. So what kind of drove you to make this choice?
Yeah, so I moved to the UK and started working at iZone in a way to get more opportunities and be in the UK where, all the network was and where racing is super high. So I moved there and wanted to, way to get more opportunities to race in real life. And it didn't quite work out that way. I got a couple of drives, but that was it. And I was, in the end, just running out of money. And I decided that, doing sim racing is really nice, but when you do it, 10 hours a day, every single day, and you're low on cash and you're living a pretty bad life, and not having the life quality you would have hoped for. I decided that, okay, this didn't work out the way I wanted. I learned a lot, but I think it's time to move back to Norway, where I know a lot of more people, and I got the opportunity to start on a development project with a great friend of mine, Christian. And I spent some years doing that until I missed racing and sim racing too much. So I watched some RaceBot broadcasts, and I just wanted to get started again. So I had my old G25 still from like 10 years earlier, and both a cheap computer and some VR headsets, and started doing some races, and eventually I wanted to reach the World Championship, so I set that as a goal and just did a lot of races to gain iRating and make sure that I was in a position to be able to qualify. And luckily, I had a great showing in the qualifying series for driving for Positive Sim Racing. And I knew David Williams from Coanda, so I'd been in touch with him quite a lot, and he helped me as well to get started again in sim racing. And after the pro qualifying series for the World Championship, I luckily got into Coanda on my birthday, actually, the 8th of March.
I was actually just going to say, you joined on your birthday. That couldn't have been a better present, because at the same time, part of the research I done shows that you had actually known some of these Coanda guys all the way back when you had, originally started doing some sim racing, and when you jumped back into iRacing, your goal was always to join Coanda. So that must have been, just really realizing that, sim racing, I can do it again.
Yeah, it was, I always looked up to these guys in Live for Speed, and seeing how well they did on iRacing, you knew it was going to be tough to get back to their pace in such a short time, because it was only, it was less than a year, I think, from I started iRacing to I had qualified for the World Championship. But it was always my goal to join Coanda, because I had, some friends there, like David. And I was always honest about that with everyone. Positive Sim Racing knew that I wanted to go to Coanda at some point, and they made it clear that I had to qualify for the World Championship to at least have a shot. So that's what I needed to do.
Quite a high bar there, isn't it? It's,
but
you've got to be a World Championship driver already before we even consider.
Yeah, but it makes you push yourself hard, and you really got to work hard for it, and that's what I did, and it motivated me to keep pushing and develop myself, and because. There's, even though you can be a good driver, but to be there was only 10 spots as well to qualify for the World Championship, and to beat those other guys who are extremely talented as well. It's it really requires a lot of determination and hard work.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people might not even appreciate just how much hard work really goes into it. Can you kind of just, if you still remember, do you remember how much time you were putting in every week to prepare for these kind of races? Because some of the numbers I've heard from some of these World Championship drivers, I mean, it really is like doing a job. You have to spend all the time testing, you have to figure out all the strategies, and then you just have to get the laps in to get the muscle memory perfect.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty cool story, because I was living in another city then called Trondheim with my girlfriend. And I had the simulator. I was working for a startup company called Ducky, and I had my simulator actually at the office. So I was sat at office, and right after work, I jumped into the simulator, and I was there the entire day until we had to go home, either catch the last bus or have to walk or take a taxi, because it was too late. And my girlfriend actually some of the times came to work with dinner so we could eat there, so I could spend as much time as I could in the simulator itself. So it was I was on the sim, I don't know for how many hours, but from like 4 to 12 at night sometimes a little less, and I tried to have Sundays off because that was the day after the race. But no, it required a lot of work, and it certainly paid off in the end. But to everyone who wants to do well in sim racing, you really have to put down the time and the hours to not just driving, but you have to analyze a lot. How you can improve. You have to have a plan. How you should go about things and how you can structure your life in order to make time for sim racing and have time to study and get better.
I do kind of just want to jump in here and say, it's something that I've observed within the context of sim racing that doesn't quite happen perhaps in the real world side of things. And you're probably a good person to ask this considering you've done both, but with real life racing, of course, you have very limited practice time, both with the car and with the track that you're at any given weekend. But in sim racing, you can basically any time, as long as you're not in an official race, you can just boot up the track, boot up the car, you can go and test. As a result of that, do you think that adaptability is less of a factor in sim racing than it is in the real world?
Especially earlier, it used to be that way. It still is a little bit. I think you need to be more, adapt more in the real thing. But because you can practice as much as you want for sim racing, earlier you had the same weather. It was static. You could practice the same weather all the time, and nothing changed in the race. But now you have, a lot more things to think about. The weather can change. It might be different from when you practiced. Tires go off. They're cold at the start of the race. There's a lot more factors that come in than just sort of hot lapping. But at the same time, you have, the offline events now, the LAN events. And normally you see the same guys, who are the best online, still being the best offline with limited practice in another rig. So I think sim racers are pretty good at adapting, especially the top guys. So it's I don't know. Real drivers will have less time for sure, and they're in a different car sometimes. Limited time in a new car, you sit differently. So it's not as needed in sim racing, but I think as time goes on, it will just be more and more important.
Yeah, those live events are particularly weird sometimes because we still don't get too many of them, especially compared to other esports, for example, where in Counter-Strike, for example, before COVID, it felt like there was a LAN every single other week. It's and that situation, is very normal for them, but for us in sim racing, of course, that those events don't come along too often. And I was just thinking about, good point that you brought up with the adaptability when it comes to LAN events. And it's something that we actually do talk about on those broadcasts whenever we get to do them. But of course, the difference is in sim racing compared to a lot of other esports is that in the other esports, you can specify, you can bring your own equipment. And I haven't seen a sim racing event do that just yet, unless we're talking about like a couple of years ago in the GT500 at Sim Racing Expo, where people were able to bring their own rigs and equipment. But of course, that's going to become less of a thing. So do you think that's going to be a big factor now once we get live events back going? Getting used to just the completely different kinds of equipment, because of course you might have a direct drive wheel with Heuer pedals, for example, and then you might go to an event where all they have is a Logitech G29. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, exactly. I think it will require more of you as a sim racer, that you can jump onto new equipment and new things, but the same thing still applies. Driving the quickest around the track. But it will certainly benefit those who are able to take those changes and adapt quickest. And it will definitely be a thing that we will see going forward. And it will be interesting to see maybe if the younger guys are better at it than the older guys. Who knows? It will be interesting to see.
So kind of continuing on now, Tommy. So we talked about your real racing now, up to joining Coanda. That first season in the, World Championships went fairly well. You got 12th place. And then obviously the transition happened over to the Porsche 911 Cup car. And I think last year you slowly were building up speed. It all culminated obviously in that win in the feature race at Spa with some fantastic passes as well. It was a great race to watch. And then this year has been another solid year. And I think it's fair to say you're slowly just getting more and more comfortable with, competing in the World Championships, competing in this car now. And I kind of wanted to ask, you had this goal of joining Coanda. You obviously worked very hard with everyone at Positive Sim Racing. And I've raced with a lot of those guys at Positive Sim Racing as well, so I know just how quick and prepared they are. But you make the jump up to an elite level team like Coanda. What changes in terms of your preparation? How much more are you expected to do? And then how much more are you getting in terms of help from the team? Because obviously you're now on a star-studded team. You've got Josh Rogers and all types of drivers there. David Williams as well. So that extra help, how much benefit have you been able to get over the last 2 or 3 years?
My teammates are extremely quick, and they have a lot of knowledge, which is, I think, maybe the biggest difference. Obviously the raw pace, but I think just their knowledge about the car, the settings, how to set up the car, and just everything in the sim was mind blowing. And to be honest, I came in when Martin Krönke had just won 2 world championships. Or if it was one, at least he was a world champion back then. And I remember I was a bit scared being in the session alone with Martin Krönke in the beginning, because to me he was a legend, And now to be able to, have these guys push you, Josh Rogers especially, he's insanely quick. No matter what he drives, he can just jump in the car and he's quick straight away. And it really makes you push you, and, you have data to compare yourself with. These guys, we communicate perhaps better than we did in PSR, and everything is sort of tracked. We're tracking our progress and what we're doing, and we're working strategically to evolve, both as drivers, but also what we find in driving wise, but also on the setup on the car. And everything is taken to a new level. And it's it's not like I'm demanded, or like people are expecting me or to do a thing. But once you are in that environment, you just want to improve and you want to get better, and you don't want to let your teammates down, especially if it's an endurance race. So everyone just pushes each other's, and everything. We work very smoothly together. There's nothing hidden from each other. Everything is open. We use VRS, Virtual Racing School, as a platform, so everything is shared. We can access all the data from all our teammates, and I especially use that a lot just to improve my own driving, to see where I'm losing time and what I can do better, and also seeing where I'm doing well, and trying to find things that I do consistently bad or good, to find any trends that I can work on in long term. And I think that eventually is what has made me be a bit better this year. First of all, I've worked a lot harder than last year, and I've done it more systematically. So I schedule my days better, and I've done it now full time as well. I quit my job earlier, and I'm doing sim racing now full time. But I'm just working more systematically and trying to find where areas that I can improve, and also being in the right state of mind when the races come. And I actually went back to analyzing last year at the start of this year to see if I could find new trends that I was, or areas that I was slow in or could improve during the year, to see if things sort of continued on from race to race.
Yeah, and we actually had a wonderful comment from one of our YouTube viewers, Alex Chapman. Says, hi all, I'd be really interested to know what support, physical, physio that you get in the real world versus sim, and if they're needed on both. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, that's something I have heard of happen. Of course, other esports, they have sports psychologists and physios and things like that help the team from a physical and mental perspective. Is that a similar thing that happens in Coanda right now? I know, for example, it happens in Red Bull, because I know they have the partnership with G2 Esports, so they have a lot of resources there. But as far as Coanda goes, is that something that you guys do, and do you think is actually necessary for what you do?
I think it's a good thing. It depends a little bit, but having maybe other people that can help you in other aspects is good. Just being in a different environment and getting some inputs elsewhere. We don't have it at the moment in Coanda, as in having another or dedicated persons to that, but we do share all our experiences together, everything we've learned from other people or groups. So it is something that we talk about, and I have regular meetings I'm under event management as well, and we do have like sports meetings after every world championship race, and find things to do better, and how I felt during the race, and trying to make improvements for the next one. And I also shared my experience from working at iZone, and I actually had a call with Neil from iZone before the Spa race last year, because I was struggling a little bit in qualifying, and then had a chat with Neil from iZone, and he gave me some tips, and we're sharing those between us in Coanda.
And obviously, I mean, there's obviously the Coanda house in Germany as well. So, the guys there, they've got a lot of support in and amongst each other. Have you ever, now that we know that you've quit your job, have you ever considered, I know there's limited bedrooms in that house, but it's something that we've talked about here at RaceSpot as well. We'd love to have, a RaceSpot TV house. Is that something that you like the sound of? And if you had that opportunity, is that something that you'd like to be able to explore, to, just grow even more as you continue to get more and more opportunities? Because we're going to talk about in just a moment, you got the chance to be part of an official Porsche Works team as part of the virtual Le Mans. That was all driven at that Coanda house as well, the mission headquarters, if you will.
Yeah, I would love to be part of the house. It was a bit too early for me, so I was still working, and I still have a lot of network and things that I still need to be here in Norway for yet. But eventually, I would love to be part of a house and live together with a team, and being there to race together and practice together. It's easier, once you're at the physical location, you talk, much more openly, or you just talk things through, during lunch or whatever. So I think it would be nice to be in that environment, and sort of have the feeling of being together with the teammates, because we talk a lot together, but it's not always we don't have the opportunity to. Well, I don't have the opportunity to be together with them all the time. So it would be nice to to have it as a more of a normal job in the in the coming years, so we could do it full time in the same location.
But let's quickly talk about the virtual Le Mans, because obviously we talked about it earlier in this podcast, because the production level from the broadcast, it was unparalleled in sim racing terms. It was one of the best produced and biggest scale broadcasts there were. And the event as well, it tried to bring in as many real drivers as possible. And then you had the Porsche team who partnered with Coanda to bring the Porsche Works Esports factory team now, and you were part of that team with Josh Rogers, Aichan Guvan, and Nick Tandy that won the race. And just how special was it, not only to be obviously winning the race, but just to be part of the event? Because talking to some of the other sim drivers that got to be a part of it, there was a real sense of gratitude that they didn't just lock out the sim drivers. They really made an effort to say, you have to have a few sim drivers and you have to integrate them into your team. And I think a lot of these drivers really took this opportunity to try and gain a little bit more experience of how things work in the real world as well. Yeah,
it was a crazy event, and it was so surreal. I think it never really got to me how big it actually was. It was, it's extremely special to be part of, and not just the race. We, being part of Porsche, especially, is it's a dream come true. I love Porsche, always done. I even have a Porsche, and the whole experience was just surreal and dream come true for me. So I'm, massively thankful for being able to take part in that, and for Coanda and Porsche to have faith in me to deliver. And for me, it was very hectic the last hours before the race, because I was at a karting event some weeks earlier, and something happened to my back, so I had a back issue coming towards the race, but it didn't really bother me. And then on first day before the race, I was walking my dog, and not far from home, luckily, I sneezed, and that completely screwed my back. So,
Wow. Oh no.
so I could barely walk home, and it was first day evening. I think it was like 10, and I called Roy from Event Management, and he knew some people, so he was gonna try to get hold of them during the night while I was trying to get some sleep. And luckily, there was one guy who wasn't even supposed to work on a Friday, who is extremely good. He's called Kjell from Med Oslo, and he fixed my back in like 1 hour, having like 10 syringes or needles in my back, and just making me able to walk again. So I was still in a lot of pain during the race, but I was able to drive, and I had to do a lot of seat modifications and everything to get through it. But it made everything really interesting. And if it wasn't, if I wasn't pumped for it before, then I definitely was, at that point.
I actually wanted to ask you, how did you celebrate that? Because obviously, Josh and team were at the house, and we saw that moment of celebration. For you, you were by yourself and seemingly in quite a bit of pain. What was the celebration like at home?
It's the weirdest thing ever, I'm watching the broadcast, and I was driving as well, and talking to my teammates, and you can hear the celebration. I have my headset on, and you feel like you want something massively big, and then you sort of, everything calms down, you take off your headset and you walk outside, and you're just like, yep, back to real life. So it feels like nothing really happened. But my neighbor actually came, who was watching the race, so he came with champagne. So I had a glass of champagne with my neighbors, so and my girlfriend. So that was pretty good.
That's pretty nice, because I was going to say, obviously, awesome. In these last few months, it must have been it's not like you can go out and have a party, right? Even if your back was fine, you're stuck at home. So that's nice to hear. But what's next then for this? Because obviously you got the rest of the season coming up, and hopefully you're in a good position right now. You're not going to have to go through the qualifying process again. You'll be locked in. What are you looking at now for the rest of the year in terms of your goals? Because I think every driver has goals, and that's ultimately how you improve, is by obviously working towards something. So what are you aiming for in the latter half of the season? Is it another race win? Is it just consistent performances?
Yeah, my dream goal has always to be a world champion. To me, it doesn't really matter what, as long as I become the best in the world in something. And sim racing is obviously where I reckon I have the best chance. So that's always been my dream, and that's what I'm working towards. And before this season, I knew it would be tough to win the championship. So I set myself a goal, a hard goal, I'd say, to be in the top 5 when the season ends, and hopefully pick up a race win as well along the way. So now after 5 races, I am P7 in the championship. I've had a couple of tough rounds, especially Silverstone. Road Atlanta was good pace-wise. I just made a little mistake in qualifying, which set me back for the races. But I'm feeling confident again, and I think I can be in there and fight for race wins during the rest of the season. And I want to be a world champion, so I am working extremely hard to develop and take steps as a driver for next season, and using this year to continually get better and get some good results towards the end, and hopefully snatch that top 5 in the championship.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit tough, though, because you are about 70 points behind Dane Warren right now. But I think that's, like you say, you have to have a goal to aim for, and hopefully you'll be able to get there. Last thing before we let you go, it's something that I had asked you right when you jumped on, because I was very curious about this, because in your Porsche bio, it says that you are part of the national elite team of the Norwegian Automobile Sport Federation in Norway. And you're the only one of the 12 athletes who is a sim racer and not a real racer. And I think our YouTube chat probably is going to appreciate knowing what type of support you get from that, because I think it's a very interesting program, and to be the only sim driver there, it's very special that they're seeing this, emerging sport really starting to, gain some kind of traction here.
Yeah, I've been a little bit unlucky because of the Corona and COVID-19 situation, so we've not been able to like come together as much as they had planned to. But we do have like a physical coach that we can get training from, and we train together as groups, and we get access to a mental coach, so you can have sessions with him, and you get access to training at Olympiatoppen, which is like where all the professional athletes in Norway train, like swimmers and whatnot. And you have like group, we like come together and work together and train together, and do things outside of our comfort zone, and try to be like a close, like a unit, helping each others and training and pushing each other. But it's been a little bit different season to what it normally would be because of the Corona. So I'm looking forward to when hopefully we get that all calms down and we can have some sessions together again. But you get that support, and they guide you, can give you guidance on your career, if in real life what series to drive, and you have basically backing from the federation and being one of the elite drivers in Norway. So it also gives a lot of media attention. They do some sessions with media, and that's mainly it.
Awesome. Well, Tommy, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing. I hope that it was good to be able to tell your story, because like I say, I think you got a really, really interesting story, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of your season goes this year, and hopefully we'll see some kind of title challenge from you next year. So thanks for joining us, and good luck for the rest of this upcoming season.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys. It was awesome to be here and talk to you.
All right, so that was Tommy Ostgaard, currently 7th in the standings. I'm going to wrap up, Connery, by just going over the Porsche Esports Supercup, because last time out at Road Atlanta, Josh Rogers taking home his first win of the season. Starting to come together for the driver from VRS Coanda, but still a lot of fighting to go, and I think he's going to be looking towards the later half of the season now as a point where he's really got to start pushing to challenge Sebastian Job for the title again.
Yeah, I mean, he made some good inroads in that previous round, but of course the points difference between first and second place, it's still not too much in the grand scheme of things. So he's steadily making some progress, but Job has just been so strong over the last 3 rounds. The only time he didn't finish on the podium in the last 3 rounds was the sprint race at Silverstone. So he's had incredible pace so far this season, and this is something that we've kind of been waiting to see from Seb, because he had moments of brilliance last season in 2019. And now he's able to string those sorts of performances together into a more cohesive championship fight, because he was on the outside looking in last year. It might have worked out mathematically for him if some of the other drivers had worse luck, but now he's really in the driving seat, and he's the one looking behind him at all of his challenges.
Yeah, 18 points clear with 5 races still to go, so Sebastian Job is in the driver's seat. An impressive drive from Maximilian Benecke as well, Connery. Not the greatest qualifying performance way back in the field. He made his way up in that sprint race, made his way further up in the feature. He's still sitting 53 points behind in 4th position right now. He started off the season with some terrible luck, but he's still in a fighting chance right now. What are you expecting from the Redline driver? Because Redline in general this season have really not been performing to the strengths that we've really expected them to.
I mean, look, you just got to look at the standings. I mean, Benecke is probably, he's the only Redline driver that's put in his own innings, a good set of innings, shall we say. The rest of them, it's Vollmeyer, bottom of the standings, 0 points. Gianni Vecchio, of course, that's a whole different situation. Bottom of the standings, 0 points. A couple of others further down as well. None of them really breaking into the top 20 positions, which is for a team as expectant as Redline, that is not good. That is not good at all. And I think they've kind of apart from Beneka, they haven't really been able to recover from what was an absolutely abysmal Zandvoort at round 1. Because they had cars caught up in the mid-pack, caught up in incidents. Of course, they've had the on and off nature of Verstappen as well, obviously, who can't commit to all the races, so that kind of hits their tally as well. And so it's, you have other drivers, Thebe, Dan Beats, UC Akala. They're not really anywhere to be seen. Dan Beats up in 13th place. I guess that's kind of doing well for himself, but perhaps not where we expect a lot of these Redline drivers to be. Yeah. So the rest of the members of the teams now, they have to step up to Beneka's level, because Beneka is just carrying Team Redline on his back through the series right now, and for a team where we expect them to be multiple drivers inside the top 5, if not inside the top 10, it's been nothing short but diabolical for them so far. I hope for their sake in the final few rounds of the season, well, in the final half of the season, let's be honest, that they're able to get some momentum and maybe get some of those drivers that are outside the top 20 into that automatic qualification spot for next year. Because otherwise, well, they're going to have a big task in terms of qualification for 2021.
Yeah, so we said it a little bit earlier, the top 20 are locked into the next season of the Porsche Esports Supercup, and there's a lot of names, Connery, that are on the bubble right now. Martin Kroenke, he's in 16th place. You've got Jamie Fluke in 20th, Mitchell de Jong 21st, Patrick Holzman, Jared Filsell, Alexei Usilakala, Alexander Thebe, Mark Perez. The names go on and on. Bobby Zielinski, Antoine Higlin, Gregor Hutu all the way down in 33rd place. Johan Harth, a very multi-dimensional driver, down in 38th. There are a lot of strong drivers here who are in danger of having to go through what is one of the toughest qualifying series across of all of iRacing.
Yeah, Apex have been having their own struggles. I think it's kind of very similar to what they had last year. We have, Kevin Ellis Jr. is up there, and he's shown that on his day he can be a very, very strong driver. So I'm not surprised by his performance. He's just behind Tommy, actually, our special guest on the standings. But everyone else, it starts to get a little bit concerning for them. Hugeland down in 29th place is not exactly ideal. And like you said, Johan Harth, he's competed in every single round this season, but he's only above 2 drivers that missed rounds. So that's not ideal for Johan there, and he's going to have a massive effort and turnaround by the time the season's done to be able to qualify into next year. And I don't quite think that he'll be able to make it. I look forward to being surprised, but I don't think I'm going to be in this instance. I think he might be one of the stronger drivers that actually doesn't qualify automatically into next season.
Yeah, just 3 points to show for this season so far. Not strong at all. And unfortunately for someone like Johan as well, who probably is going to be in the upcoming Rallycross World Championship as well, when you split your focus like that, it becomes that much tougher to qualify. So, like you say, going to be interesting to see how everyone steps up. The next race, Brands Hatch, August 15th, and returning to England for the second round of the championship. It will be the third round of the championship, I do believe, because we had Brands Hatch and Silverstone before. We had Donington and Silverstone before.
There we go. Get it the right way around.
I got it the last time. It took me a while. What are you expecting from Brands Hatch? It's a very, very tight circuit, and the Porsche Cup car doesn't have much downforce. It can be a little bit tough to pass. Might see a little bit more crashing here.
Any more than usual, but sorry, that's some slight shade being thrown on the drivers there, but. It's going to be a very, very tough round. I think it can be particularly sketchy, especially turn 1 there, where you can go side by side, but it gets very, very sketchy with the elevation change down there, and of course that gravel trap really does creep up on you. But it's so important to get a good run through that section, because one of your only big overtaking opportunities into Druids, that's the only big braking zone. So you need to set up yourself for a pass into there. So it can be a really sketchy portion of the track. Meanwhile, the rest of the circuit, it's all like medium to high speed corners, isn't it? So it's going to be very, very tough to get any passing done there. But I don't know. It might throw up a few surprises. The British tracks so far in this series has been so good to watch. So I'm holding my opinion for now, but I think it's going to be If someone is qualified out of position, for example, it's going to be very, very tough for them to get back through. And that even includes Josh Rogers, who tends to qualify fastest in the qualifying session. But of course, due to the reverse grid, he gets cycled back to 8th. I think this is going to be one of the more difficult tracks for him to make his way through unless he turns on his aggression, shall we say, and just decides to send a couple of moves down the inside of Druids.
Well, you speak of Josh Rogers. He's qualified pole for every single race this season. If he gets one more pole position...
No. He's qualified in first.
Okay, you're gonna be pedantic
pole position every race. Okay, this is a gridding thing. Pole position's a gridding thing. Qualifying results are a completely separate thing.
All right, so we'll be technical. He has been the fastest qualifier in every single round of the 2020 season so far, and therefore, if he qualifies fastest once more, he will win the Tag Heuer. I don't remember what that's called, Connery.
Tag Heuer Porsche Connected Watch.
There we go. So he's going to win himself a very fancy watch, and just one more. It doesn't even take him having to get that fastest time, Connery. All it takes is 2 different people to get the fastest time now, because, I mean, for anyone to match him, they're going to have to take the fastest time in every single one of these races left now.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's going to be really possible. It's not going to be very possible for someone to tie Rogers on the qualifying wins. So I think he kind of has it in the bag right now. Tag Heuer might as well send it in the mail. It might be there by the time the next race comes around. So there we go. That's a nice little prize, isn't it? You know, a quite an expensive watch. I think it's over like $10,000 or something like that. That's insane. I don't own anything that's over $10,000, let alone a watch.
Well, it will look good next to his trophy from last year, obviously defending series champion. But that's going to be it for us here from the first episode of Talking Tents, a Race podcast. Thank you very much to Tommy Ostgaard for joining us. It was great to talk to him and learn a little bit more about his background in real racing, and also learn a little bit more about that story at the virtual Le Mans. Thank you also to Connery Maddock, veteran esports commentator, for joining us, and Hugo Luis down in the production booth, as always, making this all happen. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. We'll see you in a few weeks' time, maybe after the next race from the Porsche Esports Supercup. For now, thank you for joining us, and have a good weekend.